All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for
Good morning.
joining the annual Local Emergency Planning Committee meeting. I just wanted to go through a few housekeeping items before we begin. Just please be aware that this meeting is being recorded, and the recording can be found on New York City Emergency Management's webpage. The meeting will actually have closed captions available. The captions can be accessed by clicking on the three dots found in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you happen to be using the web link itself, there are instances where the captions may appear on a separate window. If this is an issue, please try opening up the application itself. You will be automatically placed on mute at the beginning of the meeting. So if you have a question, please unmute yourself prior to speaking. Again, because we have a closed captionist, please speak slowly and clearly, and please reserve your questions towards the end of the meeting. All right, those are all the housekeeping items. At this time, I would actually like to pass the meeting to New York City Emergency Management's Deputy Commissioner for Response, John Grimm, to welcome the new chair of the LEPC, as well as everyone else who has joined this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. And thank you to everyone for joining today. I know that everyone has very busy schedules. We all have a lot going on. So I do really appreciate everyone taking their time to join us today for the meeting. It's very important that we continue this meeting and have this time where we can come together and discuss these issues. And also like to thank Deputy Commissioner Cosgrove for taking this on. We appreciate your leadership and chairing this meeting and chairing the committee. So thank you very much for being willing to do that. And I'd like to go ahead and turn the meeting over to our chair, Deputy Commissioner Cosgrove. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much, John. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself to everybody attending, those I don't know. My name is Deputy Commissioner John Cosgrove. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Police and Security here at the Department of Environmental Protection. I started in this role back in March after following a lengthy run by Deputy Commissioner McBride here. So it's an honor to have this position, and as well an honor to be the chair here of this meeting, this committee meeting. So before I get going with the introductions, I'd like to go around with the introductory paragraph. I'd like to go around the room and see who else we might have in attendance.
Sure. My name is Robert Wilson. I'm Deputy Director of Legal Affairs at New York City Emergency Management and act as the Secretary for the LEPC.
Thank you, Rob.
I'm Harry Meyer. I'm the Director for Emergency Response and Technical Assessment at DEP.
My name is Joanne Nurse. I'm the Deputy Director for Emergency Response and Technical Assessment at DEP.
Safa Yakub, New York City DEP Right to Know program.
Anyone else? We have anybody calling in?
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Drew Freed from the State Health Department.
Good morning. Ira Foreman, Port Authority Emergency Management.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sanjay Orjas, Director of Legal Affairs, New York City Emergency Management.
Good morning. Okay.
Good morning, John. It's Captain Vincent Serino. I'm the Executive Officer of FDNY Hazmat Operations.
Good morning, Vin.
Good morning. Billy Glenn, Assistant Chief of Facilities, New York City Department of Sanitation.
Good morning. All right. For the benefit of anybody else who might be on the line, this is the Local Emergency Planning Committee meeting held under federal regulation. The under the Local Emergency Planning Committees and the Community Right to Know Act, or EPCRA. Must develop a response plan to review the plan at least annually and provide information about chemicals in the community to citizens. The plans are developed with LEPCs with stakeholder participation. The LEPC membership must include elected state and local officials, police, fire, and defense officials, public health professionals, environmental, transportation, and hospital officials, facility representatives, and representatives from community groups and media. The New York City Community Right to Know program, also known as Local Law 26 of 1988, requires the city to effectively regulate the storage, use, and handling of hazardous substances. As part of the law, we oversee the use and storage of hazardous substances that pose a threat to public health and environment in New York City through its Right to Know program. At this point, I'd like to have the minutes from the last meeting introduced by Emergency Management.
Thank you, Commissioner. The 2020 Local Emergency Planning Committee meeting was held on September 22nd, 2020. The meeting began with DEP's hazardous material operation. DEP's hazardous material operations were impacted during the height of COVID in March and April. This was due to locations being closed and staff within the Right to Know division moving to a teleworking posture. However, hazardous material responses were not impacted as emergency responders were reporting to work. Over the last several months, operations have been restored as businesses have begun to reopen, and they are seeing an increase in the number of calls. After the hazardous material operations were discussed, the meetings from the 2019 LEPC were read. Moving on, the Hazardous Substance Advisory Board meeting was made a part of the September 22nd LEPC meeting. The Hazardous Substance Advisory Board is a subset of the LEPC and meets quarterly. The June 9th, 2020 HSAB meeting minutes were as follows. Regarding the Right to Know program, there were changes to the program due to COVID-19, which were that RTK inspections were suspended in March. All of the staff were working remotely and completing technical review of the 2019 Tier 2 summaries. 95% of the 11,000 plus Tier 2 submissions had been reviewed, and inspections would resume once safe to do so. With respect to the Tier 2 and Risk Management Plan submissions for the 2020 calendar year, 11,252 Tier 2 submissions were received. Of the 11,252 submissions, 1,028 were from new facilities. 10,794 facilities submissions were submitted online, and 458 were submitted via hard copy. With regards to risk management plans, 374 risk management plans were on file as of May 31st, 2020. An additional 48 facilities are required to submit RMPs. DEP received 139 risk management plan affidavit letters, and DEP received 45 updated RMPs. Regarding inspections, 7,046 inspections were performed during fiscal year 2020. 88 facilities were exempt from filing, 332 facilities went out of business, and 341 facilities were issued a notice of violation. Regarding the Emergency Response Unit, DERTA, responders are considered essential employees and have been reporting to work on a 24/7 basis. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a 43% to 45% reduction in the number of calls received. Generally, between 300 and 400 calls are received each month. This reduction is likely attributed to fewer people going outside that could potentially report hazardous conditions. However, it was noted that there has been an increase in the number of calls over the past 2 weeks. Currently, there are no special event deployments that are scheduled. New York City Fire Department stated that the 4th of July fireworks display may be held virtually and the United Nations event would likely be canceled. An inquiry was raised by NYSEM regarding special events and large gatherings of protesters. In response, it was explained that the difference between the two was that protests are unplanned and unannounced and do not require permits, while special event gatherings do. NYSEM also inquired as to whether FDNY and DEP had sufficient PPE. In response, FDNY stated that there were no shortage of PPE, and DEP stated that 80% of staff were teleworking and essential employees had the proper PPE. That concludes the notes for the quarterly Hsab meeting that was part of that LEPC meeting. The update on Tier 2 submissions was also discussed by DEP. DEP had received 11,439 Tier 2 submissions. 1,094 submissions were from new facilities and were added to the database. 10,963 submissions were submitted online. 474 were submitted via hard copy. 95.8% of the facilities submitted online, while 4.2% of the facilities submitted were submitted via hard copy. It is easier for DIRTA to review submissions that are received online. That is why they have encouraged facilities to file online. DEP holds workshops for facilities, but have been unable to do so for the last several months due to COVID. Regarding risk management plans, 375 risk management plans are on file as of June 3rd, 2019. 19 new RMPs were received. An additional 44 facilities are required to submit RMPs. 57 facilities reported updates to their plans. 130 affidavits had been received indicating that there were no changes to their plans, and 20 inspections were completed for RMPs. Regarding the inspections, 7,173 inspections were performed during fiscal year 2020. 90 facilities were exempt from filing. 211 facilities went out of business, and 341 facilities were found in violation of the law. Regarding updates on emergency response, DEP noted that responses were down around 45% due to COVID. However, now that facilities are beginning to reopen, the numbers have gone up and stabilized. There was a 10% change from this year as compared to last year. 3,531 last year to 3,192 this year, 9.6%. DEP expected this pattern to continue and close out the year back at the normal range. Last year's special event deployment was New Year's Eve. All other special events were canceled due to COVID. And if any events did take place, they were virtual, meaning that there were no spectators. This week, the UN General, the week the LEPC meeting was held was the UN General Assembly, and from what is understood, there are many virtual meetings taking place. Thanksgiving Day Parade, like the 4th of July event, will take place virtually. This will likely continue to the end of the year. It was noted that regarding deployments to special events, DEP does not deploy unilaterally. They are part of the Hazardous Materials branch of SIMS. So, if the Hazardous Materials branch is called upon for service for a special event, that is when they would be deployed. And finally, the notable response also provided by DEP. DEP was notified by the NYPD that an individual was burnt with an unknown chemical. The location was entered where numerous chemicals were discovered, and with the assistance of DEP, they identified the substances and conducted a preliminary analysis. The chemical was identified and was then handed over to NYPD with their Investigations in Narcotics unit. The job took several days and was transported safely for further analysis. Right. That ends the call notes from the 2020 the notes from the 2020 LEPC meeting. Those notes will be uploaded to the New York City Emergency Management webpage.
Thank you, Rob. I think the next item on our agenda is we are going to embed the Hazardous Substance Advisory Board meeting for our current quarter. And for that, I turn the hosting over to Harry Meyer.
Thank you, Commissioner. As the Commissioner said, we are now holding the second meeting of the year as part of the LEPC. There are several items we're going to discuss, but we'll first begin by reading the minutes of the most recent meeting that was held on March 9th. Deputy Director Nurse will be doing that. Joanne?
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us at our LEPC meeting today. Due to the pandemic, no in-person workshops were held this year. Instead, any facility needing assistance with submitting their Tier 2 report was assisted virtually by our technical review staff. We'll now read the minutes for the first quarter of the advisory board meeting, which, as Mr. Meyer said, was held on March 9th of this year. The meeting began with Mr. Meyer opening and welcoming the participants to our first Hazardous Substance Advisory Board meeting. He explained that from the offset of the pandemic, RTK inspections were suspended and did not resume until the pause was lifted in July. During that time, RTK inspectors were tasked with reviewing the Tier 2 submissions that the program received from the 2019 reporting year. Director Meyer expressed that the staff was highly efficient in completing technical reviews via telework and was able to complete the reviews for approximately 95% of the database. Dr. Meyer also noted that the right to know inspectors are simultaneously completing inspections and technical reviews and he will provide an update on the numbers at the next meeting. In regards to the metrics, Ms. Safa Yakub reviewed the metrics for the Tier 2 submissions received for the 2020 reporting year. She stated that of March 9th, the Right to Know program received 10,330 submissions. She also stated that of these submissions, 10,238 were submitted online and 92 facilities submitted hard copy reports. Mrs. Jacob stated that 244 submissions were received from new facilities. The Right to Know program currently has 369 waste management plans on file, and an additional 17 facilities are required to submit their RMPs. The Right to Know program has received 5 RMPs affidavit letters indicating that there were no changes and 8 updates to existing risk management plans. Ms. Yaku also reported that there are currently 55 risk management plans under review and 9 facilities have been inspected. In regards to the inspection program, 5,613 inspections were done during the 2021 fiscal year, and of these, 67 facilities were exempt from filing, 295 went out of business, and 45 facilities were issued notices of violations for non-compliance with the Right to Know law and regulation. In regards to emergency response unit, Mr. Meyer explained that the pandemic has had an impact on the number of response requests made to the unit. He explained that looking at a year-over-year analysis of pre-COVID versus COVID calculated from July 2019 to February 2020, DIRTA received 2,509 requests. He also noted that in the same period, July 2020 through February 2021, DIRTA received 1,886 requests, which is a reduction of 24%. Dr. Meyer also noted that when looking at all the categories where responses are requested, it is interesting to note that pre-COVID versus during COVID, the requests still follow the same pattern with chemical odors, petroleum spills, chemical spills, abandoned chemicals, and natural gas leaks, taking that order year over year. Director Meyer also noted that the only increase was in the indoor air carbon monoxide category, which went up by 2.5 times. And that makes sense as more people are working from home. Dr. Mara announced that the next meeting date will be held on June 15th and will likely be combined with the local emergency planning committee. Dr. Mara asked if anyone had any questions. Ms. Elena Forloni from Department of Health asked if DERTA was contemplating having equipment links with chemical and rad responder. That was all the questions from the floor. Dr. Meyer can thank everyone for participating and joining the meeting, and the meeting was concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you, Joanne. Now we will have Mrs. Yakub present the 2020 Tier 2 metrics.
Good morning, everyone. As of May 31st, 2021, Right to Know received 11,175 Tier 2 submission. Out of this 11,175 submission, 335 new facility added to the database and submitted 2020 Tier 2 report. A total of 10,787 facility submitted online and 388 facility submitted hard copy report. 96.5% submit online Tier 2 report, 3.5% facility submitted hard copy report. For the risk management plan, the Right to Know program currently has 370 risk management plan on file. An additional of 44 facility are required to submit the RMP report. The Right to Know received 64 updates to the existing risk management plan, and 114 affidavit letter indicated that there is no change on their existing risk management plan report. There are 51 risk management plan report under review, and 11 facilities have been inspected. For the inspection, the Right to Know program inspection unit performed a total of 9,718 inspection during the 2021 fiscal year. Out of this, 469 facilities were exempt from filing. 694 facilities went out of business. 1,775 facilities were closed and no access. And 65 facilities were issued notice of violation for non-compliance with the Right to Know law and regulation. Anybody have a question? Thank you.
Thank you, Safa. So at this point, I'm going to just try to bring things into perspective. I know there are a lot of numbers that are being discussed, and you have so many thousand of this, so many hundred of that, so many processed, etc. Let me look at it as year over year. That makes it a little easier because that's the only way to gauge how COVID has impacted what we do here in our Right to Know program, how we monitor facilities, how we conduct inspections. If we look at the pre-COVID, we're looking at about 11,634 filings versus 11,175 for this year. A difference of about 459, 460 to be rounded off, approximately 4% less. Naturally, that number does make sense because, as Safa explained, there has been reductions in facilities, and we all know that there are facilities that have shut down, unfortunately, because of COVID. So even though we do have a reduction, the unit itself is still maintaining its mandated obligation to inspect as well as review the facilities to make sure that the documents are complete and accurate, and that the facilities, once they're inspected, are actually containing and storing the materials as they're supposed to have store and contain them in their filing. To give you an idea, as we said, last year in March, it was directed that the inspection staff for Right to Know conduct technical review in lieu of the inspection function. This continued until the New York State pause started to lift in June. And as was discussed, over 95% of the facilities were actually reviewed. In fact, the actual number for last year is 98.2%. So that is the most accurate and up-to-date number. This year, we focused our attention on doing a lot of the inspections to catch up on that gap that took place last year by doing more focusing on tech review. Now, that doesn't mean that when we focus on one thing, we neglect the other. In fact, we've figured a way where we can balance both and complete both in the most efficient manner. For example, like I said, last year we started focusing on tech review, then we resumed inspection. To give you an idea, so far out of 11,175 filing facilities, 9,718 inspections have been conducted. That's rounded up to 87% of the database. So with having a majority of the inspections conducted, we now actually pull back on the inspector work and focus on the technical review work. So within the next 6 months, similar to what was conducted last year, we expect to complete all the reviews that are still in the database to determine their accuracy. So DEP's program retooled itself and redesigned, and it actually maintained a high level of efficiency that I'm very proud to report to the committee and at this meeting. So I know Safa presented a lot of numbers, and it takes a little time to wrap your mind around it. But what it comes down to is we are running very efficient, and we will continue that way. And that's all thanks to the personnel that work for the unit and all the support that we have from our partners in this committee as well as the response community. So I want to thank you on that behalf. So I now change gears and talk about hazardous materials response. Okay. As was said in the Hsab meeting, the numbers for response requests were down. In fact, they were down to the point of about 24% less year over year because of COVID. But that number started to go back up as the city began its reopening phases. So bottom line is from 24 or 25% different, we closed the year as of this point through May, because I do not have the complete numbers for June yet, at approximately 11%. So we regained in so many months, we're talking March, it's now June. So in only several months, we went from 24% up to 11%. And I'm expecting as the city resumes full operation, that we will go back to our normal position of 300 to 400 requests for emergency responses per month. So that is what the pattern is indicating. So that's response. We are going back to normal, and the pattern that was again indicated with the categories still holds true. And it seems that pattern is not unique to any condition. It is just how the responses play out year over year. So I just want to also talk about response and bring up something of interest to the response community and our partners. And this is something that is important because it creates a bit of confusion on some occasion. And that has to do with the concept of abandoned or orphaned material versus material that belongs to a responsible party. the law is clear that the city is responsible for orphaned or abandoned material. But if there's a responsible party, from our end, we usually try to have the responsible party under oversight, or our oversight in particular, under a commissioner's order, dispose of material. One thing that happens a lot, and I'm bringing this to the attention of the response agency units, is that in case of vehicle accidents, that's one that's very critical. Many a time there are fluid leaks from those vehicles, and those fluids are usually drained and put into drums for disposal. If you are the response agency there, and by the time you notify us, if we don't get to the site before you, and there's a tow truck coming to take the vehicle, please make sure that they take that drum of fluid with them, because that is the obligation of the responsible party, which is the vehicle owner and their insurance company. Once it's abandoned, it becomes a complication for us to issue an order to a responsible party. And at times, when it doesn't work out, the city becomes the responsible party. So it's something to keep in mind, something to address to your personnel and have them disseminated amongst the ranks, that, just keep it in the back of your mind. So that's something I needed to talk about. Now I want to talk about noteworthy emergency responses, special deployments, and to bring a shout out and a thank you to all of the emergency partners, especially on the response that I'm going to talk about now.
Hey, Harry? Just one question. Do you anticipate pushback from tow operator in regards to taking of the fuel? You're on mute, Harry.
Harry, I think you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner. You're right. I'm sorry, Chief Commissioner. I'm sorry. In the event there's pushback from the tow company, I mean, legally, they're obligated to take everything that belongs with the vehicle and any fluid. If there's pushback, let us know. We will call let's assume they took the vehicle and left the fluid. Let us know who it was. We will call the tow company back. If not, we'll give an order to the responsible party, and they will have to contact their insurer one way or another to dispose of the material. So the city doesn't have to assume the liability, because it does happen. Tow companies sometimes are difficult to deal with. But for most of the time, they know that they take the vehicle, they take the material, and they bill the insurance company for the disposal. And they bill it into their markup, whatever that may be. But if there's anything, Vinny, 718-595-4646. We'll be there. Thank you.
Okay.
So,
I'm just
okay. Now let me
mentioning
go
that
back.
because a lot of times
Yes.
PD has scaled back the response. So if there's no injuries, a lot of times you're not going to get PD. So it's just going to be us maybe doing a mitigation, a cleanup, and I'll get the
Yes.
word out there. We need to be doing that. No problem. Got it.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you. Okay. Going back to north and noteworthy responses. I mean, I really thought about this and I discussed it internally. And this response, as I said, merits a thank you to all of the partners that were on this particular response. So I'm going to go into it. Normally, a noteworthy response is something that, conventionally a chemical spill, a gas leak, an explosion or so. But in this case, this noteworthy response had no hazardous materials involved whatsoever. Actually, this response is a response in which the victims could not speak for themselves. and where the on-site responders exemplified the true caring nature and professionalism they are known for. This particular response that I'm talking about spanned over a time frame that encompassed 2 LEPC meetings. It first started on April 29, 2020, and concluded on November 18 of 2020. Although the physical response took 1 day, the work that ensued following the response continued for 7 months. I'm going to quote from the New York Times, and I'm pretty sure it's going to ring a bell as I continue. Quote, "This event was reported as the grisly discovery capturing the tragedy and chaos of the pandemic at its height in New York City. Dozens of bodies were found decomposing in trucks parked outside a Brooklyn funeral home, supposedly because it had run out of space," unquote. Some of you may remember this event from the news, but if not, it was the Andrew T. Cleckley Funeral Home response, where DEP was notified at 1320 hours. Everyone who responded that day conducted themselves in a manner that demonstrated respect for the entire community who were affected by the loss. At this meeting, I would like to formally acknowledge those responders, and this is in no direct order, from the NYPD, FDNY, NYSIM, DOHMH, OCME, the Brooklyn DA's office, DEP Hazmat, DEP Air Resources, who responded that day and continued to support the investigation that ensued afterward. 7 months later, on November 18, 2020, New York State revoked the funeral home's operating license, bringing closure to all those affected by the practices of the Andrew T. Cleckley Funeral Home. To my knowledge, there are lawsuits that have been filed against the home by various parties, alleging failure to carry out their duties in a respectful and lawful manner. So again, I reiterate, to all of you who are there, to all of your personnel who are there, thank you. It is something to be noted. Your professionalism, dedication, and caring is something that has to be noted during that time of very difficult responses and the difficulty of dealing with the community at large with the virus rampant and illnesses rampant. So thank you all. Noteworthy in the sense that it was a difficult time, which now leads me to a better time. I know this seems funny, but for this year, the noteworthy responses begin, or details begin, with the opening games of the Yankees and the Mets. I know no one was expecting things to open, but they did. Even though at the time was 20 or 25% capacity, I know all of the response personnel at the branch were very happy to see it begin. So this turns the chapter of a difficult time into new beginnings and a new time. Hopefully many better times to come. So with that, I now just give you my opinion and my knowledge on what details would be in place or would have been in place. This month, we usually have 3 details: the Israeli parade, the Puerto Rican parade, and the Heritage Pride parade. I know the parades were not held. Some maybe were held virtually. Some will be held virtually. But July 4th, I know that's the next event. I'm not sure. I've heard conflicting remarks that it may be virtual. There may be some events. I guess it's a little premature to say. Hopefully they will open up some events. We'll find out. But I do know for sure that there are 2 other events that will be held, and that will be the Big Apple reopening concert at Central Park's Great Lawn on August 21st, and the 5-borough bike tour the very next day on August 22nd. And of course, I expect the US Open in one form or another to run from August 30th to September 7th. So that's the knowledge I have to date. And if there's, other information from our support agency partners that we can bring up, it would be greatly appreciated if we can discuss it.
Anyone have any feedback on special deployments upcoming?
The only information, Harry, and John, that I have is that we anticipate that the UN General Assembly this year will be a regular deployment. That's the only pretty solid information that I have. Regular deployment for the UNGA.
Okay, that's good. Well, I guess we'll do it. We'll do it day by day, once we get all of our confirmations in.
One other thing too is have an
Yes.
internal meeting on Monday. This is an FDNY internal meeting about July 4th, and apparently there's going to be 5 or 6 barges deploying fireworks on the 4th of July.
You know which river, Reuven?
East River.
Okay. A nice opening for us. Okay, so if there are any questions on the things that were discussed during the Hsab, this is the time to bring them up. Okay, if there are no questions, then I thank you for that, and I go back to Commissioner Cosgrove, back to the LEPC.
Thank you, Harry. So as far as the LEPC is concerned, is there anybody on the call that has any questions regarding the LEPC? All right. And I'll take that as a negative. And Rob, would I turn it back to you for closure here?
Commissioner, there's one question in the chat.
Oh.
It's just, please summarize on today's meeting brief. All the items the other agencies shall refer to DEP and are addressed on the site.
Summarize today's meeting brief. All the items the other agencies shall refer to DEP and or address on the site. Thanks.
All the notes, I'm sorry, Commissioner, all the notes will be typed up, reviewed, approved, and then uploaded to New York City Emergency Management's website. So all the notes and everything discussed here today will be found there. I hope
Thank
that
you,
answers this. Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. I think that's all we have in the chat box, right?
Yes.
All right. Would that be
I'd like to thank everyone for attending this year's annual LEPC meeting. Again, just to reiterate, this meeting was recorded, and that recording will be posted to New York City Emergency Management's website, along with the notes and minutes of this year's meeting. So thank you again for attending. Hopefully next year we'll be able to meet in person, and look forward to seeing everyone then. So thank you very much. And Commissioner, it's nice to have you aboard, and looking forward to working with you over the next year in anticipation for the upcoming LEPC.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Robert. And thank you, everybody, for participating today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.